This podcast is a part of the Raven Sports Network, and we will be filling you in on everything Franklin Pierce Athletics. Hello, my name's Eli Meredith Jr. here at Franklin Pierce University, and with me is my co-host.
I'm John McKenna, a sophomore here at Franklin Pierce University.
And we will be covering, once again, Franklin Pierce Athletics recently. And to pass it over to John for the women's sports.
We're going to start off here with softball and the players of the week. The overall player of the week was Jordan Krause from Bentley. The pitcher was Lindsay Hibbs from Adelphi, and the rookie was Juliana Colbert. And now we're going to move over to the NE10 standings, and there has been some changes. Pace, last time we checked in, was first in the NE10. Now it's Adelphi with an impressive 11-3 record. Moving over to the Ravens, FPU is at fifth place at 6-5. They're semi-improvement from last time. They were 3-3, so now they're one game over 500 in conference play. The Ravens overall have improved to 18-10. They've been on an absolute tear, winning 4 out of their last 5 games. That last loss came in a doubleheader with St. Rose on Saturday, where they lost the first game but came back to win the second game to take 4 of their last 5. On Tuesday, they're going to be playing a doubleheader with Post starting at 3 o'clock at home. You can catch that on the Raven Sports Network on this program. Now moving over to women's lacrosse. The player of the week was Maeve Johnson out of Bentley. The defensive player was Molly Wieland from Assumption. The goalkeeper was Samantha Tangway from Pace. And the rookie was Ashley Kolomachuk from Adelphi. And something to note is that for Samantha Tangway and Ashley Kolomachuk, that's their second player of the week in 3 weeks. So they've been great this whole season, basically. Moving over to the standings, Pace is still first. They're undefeated at a 6-0. Ravens are one game under 500 at 3-4. The Ravens overall are 4-8. Their last game was a win at home against St. Rose. They're going to go on to play Southern New Hampshire on Tuesday at 4 o'clock at Southern New Hampshire University. That's going to be it for softball and women's lacrosse, and I'll pass it over to you, Eli.
Thank you, John. And here's the men's sports. Starting off with baseball. Ravens go 2-2 on the weekend, dropping both against New Haven University on Saturday and winning both games in walk-off fashion against Southern Connecticut State on Sunday. On Saturday, New Haven University beat the Ravens in both games. First game with a score of 15-7, and the second game with a score of 9-4. On Sunday, the Ravens turned it around, winning game 1 against Southern Connecticut State 10-9, and game 2 6-5 on 2 walk-off hits. With the 2 wins on Sunday, the Ravens are 12-4 in conference and continue to be at the top of the standings in conference wins. Key performers this weekend, we have to start off with Nolan DeAndre, sophomore first baseman, who batted .435 in his last 6 games, 4 home runs, 9 RBIs, making a bid for the conference player of the week, including 3 home runs on Saturday in the first game against New Haven. Second was the star shortstop Ian Battipaglia, senior shortstop, batting .412 this weekend with 4 doubles. On the pitching side, sophomore pitcher Kyle Salvati pitched 4 innings, gave up 3 hits, 2 earned runs, and 2 strikeouts in the second game of Sunday's matchup against Southern Connecticut State. And senior pitcher Sean Foodie came in for relief for Salvati, pitching 2 innings, 1 hit, 1 earned run, and 2 Ks. Once again, Foodie coming out of the bullpen to do a fantastic job and do his part in helping the Ravens win. The next game will be scheduled for Saturday, April 20th, in a conference play doubleheader on the road against American International College. First game starts at noon. Now moving on to men's lacrosse. Last Saturday, the Ravens lost to Adelphi 14-2. Adelphi is continuing to stay undefeated in the NE10 conference, moving up their record to 7-0, while the Ravens drop to 0-7 in conference. The Ravens are looking to bounce back against Southern New Hampshire this Saturday at 12 p.m. and eliminate their 8-game losing streak. And that is all for the men's sports. And I'll pass it back to John as we will be having a discussion, on women's softball as they had an entertaining 3-1 weekend.
Yeah, Eli, and that's really been the topic of discussion here when talking about athletics here on Franklin Pierce University. They've been playing some great softball, as I said, winning 4 out of the last 5 games. And before that loss, actually, they had a 5-game winning streak. And they've been winning in a multitude of fashions. They've been winning close games, 10-9 games. They've had comeback wins. And they've also just had absolute fireworks shows with mercy rules. There was an 8-0 win there. They just been playing some really great softball and some really strong players all over the field, especially in the pitcher circle. And there's just been really impressive, Eli.
Okay, John, I know that you were there to announce the games, and I just want to ask you a few questions from your perspective on what were some key things to the women's softball team going 3-1 this weekend.
Well, one of the biggest things that I saw was the resilience, especially from senior catcher Ashley Cangiano in that game against American International College. In the second game of that doubleheader, they were actually down 9-4 going into the fourth inning, and you kind of got the sense that they were slowing down. They had a rough start from Kennedy Morris. You got the sense that maybe things weren't going to go as well in that game, but the big senior, Ashley Cangiano, catcher, hit a 3-run home run right after that 6-run inning that AIC put up, and that really changed the momentum of the game. Ravens pitching really stepped up after that as Georgia Clough came in to really put out some fires and pitched really well in the pitching circle. So the two players in that game who really started it off were Ashley Cangiano and Georgia Clough, and throughout the season they've been fantastic, and those two players have been key. And a surprise has been Georgia Clough, who's actually a freshman, and she's done wonders both on the pitching circle and in the batter's box. She was actually 8 for 9, Eli, this weekend, as well as coming in relief and getting that win against AIC. And she showed some really good determination there. She actually walked the bases loaded in the top of the 7th in a 1-run game, 2-out situation, and she forced a pop-up that was caught by Haley Bigwood. That was absolutely great, and they've just been playing some really good softball.
Okay. So let me ask you a question on conference play. I know we talk so much about conference play and why that is so important. Let me talk to you about how they're now 6-5 in conference play with those 3 wins. Coming into the weekend, they were under 500. So please tell me, from your perspective, watching this team and how talented they are, how important is that going into the end of the season to have a over 500 record in conference play?
Well, it's extremely important, but I also want to touch on the fact that this team is oozing with confidence. I feel like no matter what their record is in conference, out of conference, overall, they will be confident. They have a lot of players there who really know what they're doing, and they really get loud. And not only the players and the dugouts, but also the fans get really loud as well. The confidence building is actually key when it comes to a game like softball, and they've just been great, and they're winning the games that they need to win. Even going back to Thursday, when they're playing Queens College out of New York, that's not a conference game at all, but they just win the games they need to win, especially against struggling teams. I mean, they beat Queens 20-3 in the first game, and then beat them 9-1 in the second game. They don't take any out for granted. They don't take any game for granted. They go out and they just play. They play their game. They know they can win. And then when it comes to the in-conference games, they bring that confidence in, and that's how they were able to squeak out some victories. I mean, as I said earlier, those 2 games against Queens were absolute blowouts, but then they play AIC, and then they're able to squeeze out a 10-9 win. So I feel like that confidence comes from winning those games heavily, and then using that confidence in closer games and being able to know that they can win them.
Okay, that's important. I like what you said there about confidence, because conference play and conference season is all about confidence and really how you maintain that momentum. So I want to ask you about more about the standings and how they shape up against other teams, just because I see that Franklin Pierce softball is fifth in the conference in terms of conference records. And I want to ask you about, from your perspective, when watching the game, why do they have so much confidence? Why are they so in positive spirits even when they're down? What keeps them going? Why are they so resilient?
I think a lot of it has to do with some of the seniors they have on the team that really have a lot of confidence in each other, but also every other player on the team. And they just have a lot of leadership. Like you mentioned earlier, it was the senior catcher Ashley Cangiano who really sparked that big comeback, that big 6-run comeback on Saturday. And I think that's kind of where it starts, and that just gets the ball rolling. I mean, it's not just her. Haley Bigwood, senior shortstop for the Ravens, had an absolute tear this weekend as well. And not only just at the plate, but defensively, all these players have been great. Kenjiano is great behind the plate, but she also moved to right field on Saturday, which is something that we haven't seen too much this season. But she was serviceable out there, and it's just everyone's doing their part, no matter who you are, no matter what grade you're in. Everyone just wants to do their part to win, and I think that's one of the biggest things that this team has is that everyone wants to chip in and everyone wants to win, no matter what position they have to play or what role they play on the team. Everyone chips in, and that's how they walk away with these wins.
Okay, John. So I also wanted to talk to you about Tuesday as they play against Post University. I wanted to ask you a question about how moving on from conference play and going into a non-conference game, how important is it to keep intensity and stay focused, knowing that they have St. Anselm's next matchup in a doubleheader? How important is it to continue to stay focused, even though it's a non-conference game, and really just tell your team as coaches and players that every game is important, no matter what matchup it is?
Yeah, I think that's extremely important. I feel like in some situations, in any sport really, not just softball, not just college softball, when you're playing a team out of conference, you may think these games aren't as important, or maybe you shouldn't go out in these games. But when it comes to these Ravens, I don't sense that they have that type of attitude at all. As I mentioned earlier, when they played Queens, they went all out, and they mercy ruled them twice. So I think they're always going to be looking to play hard games and win every game they play, and then feed off the energy from those games like they did against Queens on Thursday, and then bring that energy into this weekend. I think they're going to try to do the same thing here against Post. Try to get business done. Play a team that they feel like they should beat, and then take that energy into St. Anselm's to try to beef up that NE10 record, because they've had a really great season. They're 8 games over 500 overall. Right now they're only one or two, I think it's one, sorry, 1 or 2 games over 500 in any 10 play. And that's something that they know that they want to increase and improve on. And I think that they just want to play every game to win and then take that confidence into any 10 game.
Yeah, yeah. Just a note, they are one, in fact, over with a 6-5 record, and they play 4 straight games at home. Now, I want to ask you one last question about that, because we know that Franklin Pierce students and faculty come out to watch these games, and softball gets a good turnout. People like watching softball. People like watching the girls go to work on a softball field. How important is it for the softball team to work off that momentum of the fans and continue to keep the ball rolling throughout the end of the season?
Yeah, it's extremely important. And on that note, Eli, I mean, the field is right in the middle of campus,
Yep.
and the weather has been getting really nice
Yeah.
recently.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really easy for anyone all over campus to just kind of stroll by, walk in, and watch the game. And they're all very entertaining games, whether it's the Ravens winning by a lot or having an exciting game only winning by 1 run. But back to your original question, I think it's extremely important to feed off that energy. They're a really energetic team on their own. Like, they're very loud. They all support each other. It's pretty entertaining watching them play because there's a lot of personalities on that team. But there's a lot of people in the crowd, and I was there a few times, and the fans get loud and they trip the umpires a good amount, and sometimes it's not even students. So it's just people watching softball, people who enjoy the game, people who enjoy the team. Um, and I think that creates a lot of frustration for the other team as well.
Yeah.
I saw the manager of AIC actually got thrown out the last game I was at,
Hmm.
because there was an outplay that she thought was safe, and I feel like that energy somewhat comes from the fans.
Yeah.
You're playing in a away stadium, and you're not getting cheered all the time,
Yeah.
especially when you do good. And then when you get a call that you feel doesn't go your way, that frustration kind of mounts up.
Yeah.
And then she kind of bursted out, and then she got ejected from the game.
Hmm.
So I think that has a lot to do with the crowd as well.
Yeah.
So it does wonders on both ends of the spectrum. For the Ravens, it really gives them a boost, and for anyone who comes in to play them, I think the crowd actually has a toll on them.
Yeah.
So that's a really good point to bring up, Eli.
Yeah, I mean, like I think what you're basically saying, and just me paraphrasing, is about energy. Like the energy from the softball team is coming from them on to the students and people that or may not be students here or be a part of FPU. Just like people just like enjoying the game. And I know personally, just watching softball, that's one of the most energetic sports that you really see. Like the girls are doing chants, they're clapping and stuff like that. I don't know if they come up with this. I don't know if they rehearse this and practice this, what type of chants they're going to do before the game or during the game. But like everybody's in sync and they're so loud, and like when somebody gets a big hit, like they're all excited for each other, and that's why a lot of people come out to see their games. Like people enjoy that energy, they enjoy that positive energy, they enjoy just the love for the game because not everybody's able to do that. You know what I mean? That people are really, regardless if you're a man or a woman, people really appreciate the skill set, especially if they're fans of the game. So I think, I think they have great potential. I think they have great potential, like you mentioned earlier. Just got over 500 in conference. They're 8 games over 500 overall. And what I would say about finishing the season, because that's always the hardest with conference play, like I mentioned earlier, is just about practicing the right thing, staying focused, and remaining humble, knowing that you can get beat by anyone. And that's something that I actually, now that I think about it, wanted you to comment on as well about the team's just focus and just their ability to forget the distraction. Because even though that AIC coach getting thrown out, it's not on their side. That's not to quote unquote affecting them. It does affect them in a way, just terms of energy, because it's a momentum shift. It's a momentum shift when your coach gets thrown out, specifically for the team that got their coach thrown out. I've seen teams turn around just because the coaches felt like they had to get thrown out just so they can wake up their team. So how important is that to just manage your emotions and stay focused when things like that in the game happen to teams?
That's a great point. And I mean, what you said was true. After the coach was thrown out, AIC actually almost mounted a great comeback. And they were up 6 runs, and then they gave up the lead 10-9, and then they loaded the bases with 2 outs. And that was after the coach was ejected. And that gave them an energy boost. And they were putting together good at bats. Credit to AIC. They're putting together some really good at bats,
Yeah.
working some good walks against Georgia Clough, who had a lights out week overall. She had 8 strikeouts in her start on Thursday, so she's been great. And then putting together some really good at bats against a really good pitcher, and then loading the bases. And they were just this close from just one hit to tying the game or even taking the lead and forcing the Ravens to try to walk it off in the bottom of the seventh. But that momentum shift did happen for AIC. They just couldn't get that last hit to throw them over the edge. But going back to your other question on how the Ravens responded,
Mm-hmm.
is they did respond. They responded very well. They held on and they won that game. And I think that's on Georgia Clough, but I also think that's on catcher Charlotte Hartenstein, who, because Kenjiana moved to right field in that game,
Yeah.
so Hartenstein was behind the plate, and she did a really good job,
Yeah.
calming her down and having good discussions. There was a lot of pitcher circles visits that game to discuss what pitches to be thrown, and the composure was really kept there. And I think that's what really happened for the Ravens to hold on and win that game. But it just goes down to that battery of Clough and Hartenstein to be able to hold on and win that game and really not let that momentum shift take over and not let AIC take over that game and let the Ravens come out with a really good comeback win.
I agree. I agree. I think that's important. All that what you mentioned right there about the focus, and I'm sure Coach Andrew Kloss is going to continue to drill down to his team about focus, 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 and locking in towards the end because he's been the coach for over 5 years here, and he knows what it takes in terms of his experience before FPU and now. How important these end of the year games are because teams, when you're teams, whether they're in the playoffs or not, that's playing a team that's as good as Franklin Pierce, they want to just get momentum themselves. They just want to be, even if they're not in the playoffs, if they're out of it, they still want to be spoilers. It makes them feel so much better when they're just like, okay, we may have only won 4 games on the season, but we beat the Ravens. You know what I mean? So I'm sure with his experience, he's telling his team in practice, in the game, before the game, after the game, that they have to stay focused and stay tunnel vision. And that's why I think that the softball team will continue to do well and stay focused and stay sharp throughout the end of the season.
Yeah, and just last comment on him, he keeps the same expression the whole game, no matter what the score is.
Yeah.
And he holds his players accountable no matter what the score is, no matter what position is. One of those plays, runner on second tried to steal third and made the last out at third base. And the Ravens were already up by like 6 or 7 runs at the time.
Yeah.
And he was livid. And you'd think in that situation, oh, it's not that big of a deal. But he always has his foot on the gas. He's never letting go. He wants to win every game. He doesn't take any out for granted. I think that's where that energy really stems from, and it goes through the whole team.
Yeah.
I think it starts with him, and then you see it in every single player on the roster.
Yeah, that's so important. The coach staying level-headed. Level-headed coach leads to a lot of success on the team because they continue to just remain focused on the goal. Him just getting upset is just him saying, you got to remain focused. And I feel as though that's why they're going to be very successful throughout the end of the season. Thank you, John, for your analysis. And we want to thank all of our listeners. Thank you to Franklin Pierce University and the Marlon Fitzwater Center for their generosity. This podcast is a part of Raven Sports Network and is produced by the Marlon Fitzwater Center for Communication. And it is edited by John McKenna and myself, Eli Meredith. See you guys next week.